6 times the world stood on the brink of nuclear war. Welcome back to Vietnam's Vision. Despite tensions over the years, nuclear disarmament has been one of the rare issues where Russia and the United States have found common ground. Recently, both superpowers have voiced support for extending the New START nuclear treaty, which primarily focuses on further reducing their nuclear arsenals, capable of destroying the entire planet. The New START treaty is a successor to the original START-Y agreement. The reason these two superpowers support extending this historic treaty is that they have thoroughly understood the grave consequences of a nuclear war. Few people know that throughout the 40 years of the Cold War, both the US and the Soviet Union repeatedly considered using nuclear weapons to resolve conflicts. Fortunately, both nations exercised restraint at crucial moments, preventing the world from descending into catastrophic danger. The first incident, the Suez Crisis, 1956. The Suez Crisis began when Egypt, then a Soviet ally, threatened to nationalize the canal connecting Europe and Asia. At that time, the Suez Canal was controlled by British and French shareholders. This led to rising tensions between Britain, France, and Egypt. In a rare moment during the Cold War, both the US and the Soviet Union agreed to pressure Britain, France, and Israel to withdraw. A conflict erupted, but few people know that on November 5, 1956, the world narrowly avoided a nuclear catastrophe due to a series of coincidental events. That night, NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, received alarming reports about unidentified aircraft entering Turkish airspace, Soviet bombers flying over Syria, a British bomber shot down in Syria, and unusual movements of a Soviet naval fleet near the Dardanelles Strait in Turkey. However, upon verification, it turned out that these were merely swans flying over Turkey, a Syrian presidential escort aircraft, a British attack aircraft that crashed due to technical issues, and a routine Soviet naval exercise. The second incident, the 1961 Goldsboro B-52 crash. On January 24, 1961, during a routine flight over North Carolina, a B-52 bomber lost control and dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Goldsboro. Declassified documents later revealed that the only thing preventing the bombs from detonating was a faulty safety switch. One bomb shattered into multiple pieces, while the other remained largely intact. At the time, US Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara remarked, "A nuclear explosion was prevented by a mere chance. A single electrical wire did not connect to trigger detonation." The third incident, the 1961 Berlin standoff. Only months after the Berlin Wall was erected, tensions flared in October 1961 when American diplomat E. Allen Liner was stopped by East German police at Checkpoint Charlie. Refusing to show his papers, he returned with a group of US soldiers. As tensions escalated, the US deployed 10 tanks and armored vehicles to key checkpoints, prompting the Soviet Union to respond by sending their own armored forces. The two sides faced off for 16 hours. In the following days, with the Berlin crisis unresolved, any misstep could have turned Germany into a battlefield and triggered World War III. However, neither side was willing to risk an all-out war over Berlin. Thus, Moscow and Washington engaged in secret negotiations to de-escalate the situation. Newly declassified information from August 1961 revealed that President John F. Kennedy had even ordered the deployment of 216 tactical fighter jets and nuclear weapons in Europe. The fourth incident, the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. The Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962 was one of the most perilous moments in history. The Soviet Union deployed R-12 and R-14 nuclear missiles to Cuba in response to US missile deployments in Europe and Turkey. After an American U-2 spy plane captured photos of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, the US Navy detected 4 Soviet diesel-electric submarines escorting missile-carrying ships. Unknown to the Americans, each submarine was armed with 22 nuclear torpedoes. As US warships used depth charges to force a Soviet submarine, B-59, to surface, the crew, cut off from Moscow and suffering from extreme heat and high CO2 levels, nearly launched a nuclear torpedo in retaliation. Fortunately, Officer Vasily Arkhipov convinced the crew to await official orders from Moscow, averting a nuclear disaster. Following intense negotiations, the Soviet Union agreed to withdraw missiles from Cuba, while the US pledged to remove its missiles from Turkey and Italy. The fifth incident, the 1973 Yom Kippur War. In 1973, Egypt launched an attack on Israel to avenge its defeat in the Six-Day War of 1967. Initially, Egypt gained some ground, but soon Israel counterattacked, placing Egyptian forces in grave danger. The Soviet Union, determined to protect its ally, threatened military intervention, prompting the US to escalate its nuclear readiness to DEFCON 3, the highest peacetime alert level. Fearing an all-out nuclear confrontation, Moscow backed down, choosing not to deploy troops. In response, Washington also de-escalated its military posture. At the time, Israel was believed to possess nuclear weapons, and its Prime Minister, Golda Meir, did not rule out their use. With the US as Israel's closest ally, a direct Soviet-Israeli conflict could have drawn both superpowers into a global nuclear war. The sixth incident, the 1983 NATO exercise and false alarm. In 1983, during a period of heightened US-Soviet tensions, NATO conducted the Able Archer exercise, testing military communication in case of war. Soviet intelligence, fearing the drill was a cover for a real nuclear attack, put its nuclear forces on high alert. Unbeknownst to many, the most dangerous moment came in September 1983. During this time, Soviet early warning satellites mistakenly detected 5 intercontinental ballistic missile launches from the US toward the Soviet Union. Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov, the officer on duty, faced a critical decision: report the attack and trigger a retaliatory strike or assume a false alarm. Reasoning that a real US strike would involve more than 5 missiles, Petrov chose not to escalate the situation. Subsequent investigations revealed the alarm was caused by sunlight reflecting off clouds, misinterpreted by Soviet satellites. Petrov's judgment prevented a nuclear war. Final thoughts. These 6 incidents serve as stark reminders of how close the world has come to nuclear war. Albert Einstein once said, "I do not know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." It is our collective hope that a global nuclear war will never happen. Hopefully, world leaders, especially those of nuclear-armed nations like the US and Russia, will think twice before making rash decisions in times of crisis. If you're new to our channel, please like, share, and subscribe. Goodbye and see you next time.